Welcome to the deep dive. You've come to the right place if you want to cut through the noise, take your source material, and pull out the absolute must-know insights.
Yeah, get right to the core of it.
Exactly. Today, we're taking a deep dive into something pretty fundamental, how we as parents or caregivers can navigate those tricky, challenging moments with the kids.
We're using strategies highlighted in the sources you shared.
That's right. And these sources, they really zero in on two specific approaches.
Yeah, two powerful ones, actually. And they seem simple on the surface, but there's quite a bit of, child development research behind them.
Okay, what are they?
Well, first, intentionally ignoring certain types of non-harmful misbehavior. And second, consciously modeling self-control ourselves,
Yeah.
especially in those tough moments.
Okay, so ignoring and modeling. Let's unpack what this material really gets into. The mission here is to understand why these strategies matter, right?
Right. And how they can help build those really crucial skills in children. Things like managing big feelings.
Yeah, like emotional regulation.
Exactly. And handling frustration without completely, falling apart. It's about building their internal toolkit, really.
So building that frustration tolerance we hear about.
Precisely. Capabilities that honestly serve them their entire lives.
Okay, so let's start with the big picture idea. This seems to be the foundation for, well, everything in these sources. Why is our behavior as the adults so incredibly impactful?
It really boils down to this core insight. Kids are basically learning machines. And their primary curriculum, it's you. They're absorbing so much more from what they see you do than just what they hear you say. Every reaction, every choice you make, especially when things get difficult.
That's shaping their understanding.
Totally. Of themselves, of the world, of how to handle emotions. It's constant learning.
So it's like they're always watching us for cues. How does the world work? How should I be in it?
Exactly that. They're figuring out, okay, how do I respond to challenges? How do I manage what's going on inside me? How do I get my needs met? And the sources emphasize these two strategies, the selective ignoring and the active modeling, as really deliberate ways we can influence that learning, guiding them towards emotional intelligence and more positive ways of behaving.
And the payoff, according to this material, it's not just about getting them to stop doing something right now.
No, it's much bigger than that.
It's about long-term capacity, helping them regulate their own emotions, building that frustration tolerance, maybe even cultivating that internal drive, self-motivation.
Yeah, it's a shift, moving from trying to control them from the outside to helping them build that control on the inside.
Okay, let's jump into that first strategy then. Ignoring non-harmful misbehavior. Now, this one can feel, well, it feels counterintuitive, maybe even a bit scary for some parents.
It really can.
What exactly do the sources mean by non-harmful? Because, let's be clear, we are absolutely not talking about ignoring dangerous behavior.
Oh, absolutely not. And the sources are super clear on this. It's a crucial distinction. Non-harmful means the stuff that's, annoying, attention-seeking, maybe mildly defiant, but there's no risk involved.
Okay, like what specifically?
Think whining, pouting, making silly noises just to get a rise out of you, or maybe throwing something soft like a pillow or a stuffed animal.
Gotcha.
We are explicitly not applying this to anything like aggression, hitting, destroying property, anything unsafe.
Yeah.
If it's harmful or dangerous, you step in immediately. Period.
Okay, crystal clear. The annoying stuff, not the dangerous stuff. So why ignore the annoying but harmless things? It really feels like you're just letting them get away with it.
Yeah, and that's the hurdle for a lot of people. But this is where that core insight from the sources comes in. And like I said, it's backed by decades of research. The key is understanding that attention, and this is the kicker, any attention, positive or negative.
Any attention.
Yep. It can act as fuel for a behavior. So if a child whines and you react every single time, maybe you sigh loudly or roll your eyes or scold them.
Which is hard not to do sometimes.
Oh, totally. But that reaction, even though it feels negative to you, it's still a form of attention. And for some kids, that attention, getting that reaction from you, actually reinforces the behavior. It makes it more likely to happen again.
Oh, wow. So the reaction itself is the reward. That's fascinating and definitely counterintuitive.
It really is. So ignoring in this very specific context for these specific behaviors, it's not about ignoring the child. You're not being unavailable.
Right. Yeah.
It's about strategically withholding that fuel. It sends a calm signal like, okay, that particular way of trying to get my attention or get a reaction, that's not going to work.
So it teaches them to try something else.
Exactly. A different, more appropriate approach.
And does this line up with, like, behavioral science?
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
It's based on principles showing that when a behavior consistently fails to get the desired outcome in this case, your reaction, it tends to fade away. It decreases over time.
Like extinction.
Sort of, yeah. And approaches like parent-child interaction therapy, or PCIT, which is widely used and studied, they specifically incorporate this idea. Selective ignoring to help parents reduce disruptive behaviors while boosting positive ones.
Okay, makes sense. So how do you actually do this in the moment? Because staying calm when you're being whined at, like intensely,
Yeah.
that is,
Yeah,
well, it's a challenge.
it absolutely is.
Yeah.
And the sources give practical tips. The big emphasis is on your own state first.
Okay.
You aim to stay as calm and neutral as possible. That means actively trying not to sigh dramatically or frown or lecture or give those disappointed looks while the behavior is happening.
So you're present, but not engaging with the whining itself.
Exactly. You might be visually tracking them, making sure they're safe, but you're not feeding the unwanted behavior.
It's just write it out, wait for it to stop.
You wait. And this part is really key. You wait for a break. A calm moment after the misbehavior has stopped. The whining stops, the pouting face relaxes. Maybe they take a breath. That's when you re-engage.
Okay, wait for the calm. Then what do you do?
Then you look for an opportunity to praise or connect around a positive behavior that's happening now.
Ah, okay.
So the sources suggest once the child is kind of self-regulated a bit, stop the unwanted thing. You might calmly say, hey, I like how you're using a quiet voice now, or thanks for standing so nicely, or you could offer redirection, like, okay, let's go read that book now. But notice that positive attention or the redirection, it happens after the misbehavior has ended and they've returned to a calmer state.
Ah, I see. So you're not rewarding the whining itself. You're noticing and reinforcing the moment they choose something different, a more regulated state. That clicks.
Exactly right. You're teaching them calm, regulated behavior. That's effective. The annoying stuff, not so much.
Which brings us really nicely to the second strategy, modeling self-control. How does my staying calm actually help my child when they're the one having the meltdown?
Okay, so this connects right back to that initial point about kids learning from watching us.
Right, the observation thing.
Yeah. Children, especially when they're upset or, escalated, they are highly, highly attuned to your emotional state. Think of it like tuning forks.
Okay.
Your nervous system is essentially influencing theirs. Yeah. If you get agitated or start yelling when they're escalated, you can actually, without meaning to, amplify their distress.
Yeah.
Or years. You show them that's how you handle big feelings.
Oh, so if I yell back when they scream, I'm basically teaching them yelling is a valid response to frustration.
In a way, yeah. You're providing the template. There's this thing called social learning theory.
Endura.
Right. It suggests children imitate the behaviors they observe.
Yeah.
So by staying calm during a chaotic moment, you are actively demonstrating live what emotional regulation looks like.
You're showing them.
You're showing them, okay, things feel really intense right now, but here's one way to handle that intensity without losing control. And researchers who study this stuff, child development, the nervous system, people like Siegel and Bryson, they talk a lot about co-regulation.
Co-regulation.
Yeah. Yeah, where a parent helps a child regulate their feelings. And they say this is absolutely foundational. It's how a child eventually learns to self-regulate on their own. It's like you're lending them your calm.
Lending them your calm. I like that.
Until they can build their own.
That's a great analogy. Can you give me some concrete examples from the sources? Like, what does this modeling look like in action?
Sure. The sources give several good ones. Like, instead of getting sucked into a screaming match, you might intentionally lower your voice, maybe take a really visible deep breath, and speak softly, even if they're still loud.
Okay.
Another example, when you're faced with defiance. Instead of escalating into a big argument, you might calmly state a boundary or an expectation, and then maybe step back slightly. You can say something like, okay, I'll be right here when you're ready to put your shoes on.
So you're holding the line, but from a place of internal calm.
Exactly. You're grounded.
Okay, so it's not about being passive. It's about being grounded in your own response. And the sources even suggest making your internal process visible, like talking it out.
Yes. This is one of those powerful techniques they highlight, actually. You narrate what you're doing inside to stay calm.
How would that sound?
You might actually say out loud, wow, I'm starting to feel really frustrated right now. My shoulders are getting tight. So I'm going to take 3 slow breaths. Like that.
Huh.
Or you could have a simple, observable calming ritual you use yourself. Maybe you step away for just a moment, get a glass of water, do a quick stretch, and you let your child see you doing it.
So you're essentially thinking out loud about managing your own impulses so they can hear the process.
Exactly. You're kind of pulling back the curtain on that internal work. Another example is voicing your problem solving around difficult feelings.
Right.
You might say, okay, my first thought is to get really loud right now, but I know that won't help. So I'm going to try asking calmly one more time, and if it doesn't work, maybe I'll need to take a minute. You're showing them that internal debate and the conscious choice you're making to regulate.
That feels incredibly valuable because it teaches them that regulation isn't just magic. It's a skill, something you actively do.
Precisely.
So how do these two strategies to die, the ignoring non-harmful stuff and the modeling self-control, how do they work together?
Well, they're a really powerful 1-2 punch, actually.
Okay.
Ignoring the non-harmful misbehavior, that effectively removes the reinforcement. It takes away the fuel for the challenging stuff you don't want to see.
Right, draining the fuel tank, like you said.
You're teaching them, okay, the annoying, attention-seeking behaviors,
Yeah.
they won't get the result you want.
Got it.
And then modeling self-control simultaneously shows them the alternative. It demonstrates the regulated, calm, problem-solving way of being that is effective and appropriate.
So less fuel for the negative, more modeling of the positive.
Exactly. Used together, they kind of chip away at the ineffective, challenging behaviors by not fueling them while actively building up the skills you do want to see by demonstrating them and eventually, reinforcing them when they happen.
It really is a powerful combination then for fostering that emotional intelligence and resilience.
It really is.
It completely reframes the challenge, doesn't it? From how do I stop this behavior right now to how do I use this moment to teach a really crucial life skill?
That's absolutely the shift the sources encourage. It's all about that long-term capacity building.
Okay. So what are some key things the sources really want you listening, keep in mind when trying to put these strategies into practice?
A few critical points really stood out to me. First, your own regulation is foundational. It just is.
Start with yourself.
Yeah, kids cue off you. So prioritizing your own calm, even just taking a moment, pausing before you respond, it makes a huge difference. Second, consistency. It's pretty much non-negotiable. These aren't magic fixes, It's the consistent application over time that leads to lasting change. It takes practice for everyone involved.
Like learning any new skill, really. It takes repetition and practice.
Exactly. And finally, they strongly, strongly reiterate that distinction we talked about earlier.
Which one?
You are ignoring the specific behavior. The whine, the stomp, the eye roll, whatever it is, you are not ignoring the child.
Right. That's so important.
It is. You remain present, you remain connected, available for positive interaction. The ignoring is just a very targeted response to a specific action. It's not a withdrawal of love or connection from the child.
That distinction feels absolutely crucial. Okay, and to help people think about putting this into practice, the sources included a couple of reflection prompts. I thought these were great for just getting you thinking about your own patterns.
Yeah, they prompt some really valuable self-awareness. The first one is, what behaviors do I react to most quickly? Are they actually harmful or are they just irritating?
Ooh, good question.
Right. Thinking about that can really reveal where you might be unintentionally reinforcing those annoying but non-harmful behaviors we talked about.
Yeah. And the second one?
What is my go-to calm-down strategy? And do I actually model it in front of my child? This one directly challenges you to think about your own regulation skills and, crucially, whether you're making that process visible, making it something your child can actually learn from by watching you.
Those are excellent prompts. Really practical tools for translating these ideas into your own life.
Yeah. And the sources also mentioned several resources if you want to explore these ideas further. Things like the whole brain child, no drama discipline, materials related to parent-child interaction therapy, PCIT, the polyvagal theory, mind in the making. Lots of good stuff out there.
Great places to continue the deep dive on your own. Okay, so stepping back from all this source material, what's the biggest takeaway for you from this exploration?
For me, I think it's just how much leverage we actually have as caregivers, simply by becoming more intentional, more conscious about our own responses.
Yeah.
Choosing not to engage with the trivial stuff, the annoying stuff, while actively showing them how to manage the genuinely hard stuff. It's a fundamental shift.
Yeah.
And it builds their internal strength.
It moves us away from just trying to manage the surface behavior.
Right. And towards cultivating something much deeper, lasting emotional intelligence resilience in our kids.
Yeah, it really highlights our role not just as, rule enforcers or disciplinarians, but as active teachers, teachers of emotional life skills.
Absolutely.
And this brings us right back to that long-term goal, doesn't it? Raising resilient, independent individuals who have that strong internal motivation.
Indeed. And if we connect that back to those reflection prompts we just mentioned,
Yeah.
maybe the final provocative thought from this material for you to consider is this.
Okay.
How does focusing on managing your own internal state, your own reactions, how does that fundamentally change the entire environment in which your child is learning to manage theirs? Your willingness to do that internal work, to look inward, it directly shapes their capacity to navigate the world more independently down the road.